Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. And in today's video, we are going to be continuing ReZero Avatar Loss. What if Aang was in ReZero? Season 1, Part 3. As always, if you are new to the channel or if you're a regular and you like what we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that is to come out now and in the future. Also, quick announcement, stay tuned for this weekend as we're going to be doing a titles trailer. This is basically to show what's going to be coming out for the rest of the year, as a lot of changes had to be made with my schedule. Now, for some of you that know, we were going to be doing the anime Marvel Phase 2, which was going to be the Defender saga, but seeing how it was received, a lot of things had to be changed and rearranged, and I've decided to go with a different project that will be my official Phase 2. Also, seeing what's been done with DC, I'm deciding to basically copy what's being done. So my Anime X DC Comics verse will just be known as chapters to try to keep everything in cohesion. So you can say that you'll be getting Phase 2 and Chapter 2 this year. And we're going to be saving Chapter 3 and Phase 3 for 2024 because I don't think we're going to have enough time to go into Chapters 3 because we're already going to have a lot. There's definitely a lot that I have to show you because I've taken a lot of you guys' requests, a lot of stories that you wanted to see, and a lot of characters that you want to make a comeback. They're going to be making a comeback. So stay tuned for the stories that you're going to be seeing in the summer and fall and spring of 2023, from Anime X Marvel to DC X Anime. So you'll be getting that, and you'll be getting the slate of original stories that'll be coming out along the way. So keep that in mind. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into today's video. As always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Once again, Aang found himself looking at a familiar ceiling, although this time he had conviction and resolve, because before he awoke, he had a visit from an unlikely of person. Aang found himself in an astral plane, having no idea where he was or how he had gotten there, as he saw an older man dressed in garb from the Fire Nation standing before him. This was a man he had never met, but yet felt as though he had known him his whole life. The man smiled. "It is good to see you, Aang." "Roku." "Indeed. I don't even know how I know you, but are you..." "Yes. I am your past life. You have no idea how happy I am to see you. I have no idea where I am or how I got here or what's going on. Do you know what this place is?" "Indeed, I do not. Nothing of this world is familiar to me. If I had to take a guess, I would assume that you are indeed in another world. But how is that even possible? Another world? I've never heard of anything like this ever happening. The Avatar has gates to many worlds, worlds that cannot easily be accessed. Like the spirit world?" "Exactly. The Avatar is the bridge to the spirit world. But from beyond the spirit world, who knows? Maybe the spirit world could be the bridge to multiple worlds and realities. Even more, it leaves a lot of questions that have to be answered. But I can't stay here. I mean, what's going on in my world if I'm here?" "It will require some explaining, and it may be hard for you to believe, but you are not the only avatar. I'm not? No. When you were trapped in the iceberg, your body, as I'm sure you can see now, aged at a much slower rate. You were in that iceberg for about 85 years. Around that 85 mark, you were sent to this world. What's only been some time for you, more time has passed on the other side. The avatar cycle, for some reason, has chosen the next avatar. But I'm the avatar that you are. The best way I can describe it is that if the cycle of the avatar is a tree, then you have somehow become a branch. You jut out to the side of the tree. While you are a part of it, and that can never be taken away from you, the cycle must continue. Even if you are a branch, the tree will grow past you, and it will keep ascending. So, another avatar has been chosen in the cycle. Water? Yes, a girl from the Southern Water Tribe. She now bears the title of Avatar, and the world is at a critical juncture. The world? If the world's in danger, then I have to get back. I do not know if that is possible, and even more so, the ramifications of having two avatars in one world. Something that's never even been considered a possibility. Well, even still, if there's a way for me to get back, I have to try. I see there's something else that bothers you. You know it, don't you? The ability to return from death. I am aware of it. It seems we have been caught in the clutches of another force. A powerful one, if it can even bind an avatar. Is there a way out of this cycle? I would like to believe so, but that is something we'll simply have to see in due time. But for now, you should be wary, Aang. You are young, and I wouldn't have expected you to notice, but there seems to be a presence. A dark presence that has entered your body multiple times now, and it results in your life force being drained away. It's almost akin to a curse. A curse? I don't know anything about curses, but the people of this world do. Inquire them. See what you can learn. Aang would take Roku's advice. Once he awoken, he would visit Beatrice. Finding her was surprisingly easy, even with the ability of door jump, which should make it nearly impossible to find her in the mansion. Aang's senses to the spirits made it more than easy for him to find her. Knocking on the door and being polite, he was allowed to enter. Beatrice was sipping her tea, as well as reading a book. Aang would petition her, asking for her help. Beatrice would comply. Of course, under normal circumstances, she wouldn't want to, but the boy had proper manners. He didn't go around just barging in whenever he felt like it, and he was respectful. Aang would ask Beatrice about curses, what she knew about them, and if she could explain them. Of course, Beatrice would give all the information that she had, explaining that curses could typically come from other beings or from creatures, those known as shamans or mob beasts. The way that a curse worked when it came to a mob beast was that once you were bitten or attacked or anything along those lines, the curse would lie dormant until activated. It served as a way to drain the target of all of their mana or their power, and render them helpless to become food for later on. Aang would then have to try to figure out who exactly could have laid a curse on him. it wasn't anyone from the mansion, and the only time that he left the mansion and met anyone else were the people in the village. Could someone in the village have placed a curse on him? He didn't remember facing any real mob beast, or any type of creature for that matter, so it didn't even register to him. He'd have to keep an eye out for the villagers. Someone there wasn't what they seemed, and that could potentially be what was the target. In the meantime, Aang would spend his resources trying to figure out another way home. Whatever time he wasn't spending with Roswaal or Beatrice that was, he'd spend time with Amelia and Puck while Amelia was doing her spirit arts training. And Aang would learn the difference between a magic user and a spirit arts user. However, when Puck tried to examine Aang, what he found was shocking. You see, normally a magic arts user had a gate, a way for them to channel their mana and to use it effectively. But Aang, whatever he was an amalgamation of something entirely different. His connection to the spirits was off the charts. He definitely had the talents of a spirits arts user, but he also had not one or two gates. It was like he had 4 gates, but there was something else. It wasn't that Aang had a gate. Aang was the gate. This left Puck completely stumped, and Aang was a bit worried. This is strange, Aang. I've never seen anything like you before. What, is something wrong with me? Well, most humans have a gate, that's true, but you, the way I perceive you, it's like you don't have a gate. You're one large gate of 4 different gates. Puck could hardly even believe it. What Aang was something that you couldn't really fathom. It wasn't like Aang had one gate for one element, which, surprisingly for Aang, he would learn that the elements of this world were air, water, earth, and fire. Like his own world. Maybe they weren't so different after all. Was he sure that this wasn't his world? I mean, the magic system, it sounded so similar to the way of bending. And to hear that he didn't have 1 or 2 different gates, but that he had all 4, well, that was no shock. He was the Avatar after all. Once again, Aang would explain what the Avatar was, what he was supposed to do. I see. So, your role as an Avatar is that you have to master all 4 elements. Yeah, that's about the gist of it. And you're already a wind user, or an airbender as you call it, which means you have to master the elements of water, earth, and fire. Well, Ram is a wind user, but you're already a wind master, so there's not really much you could learn from her. Amelia is a spirits arts user, and Master Roswaal, well, he's skilled in a lot of different arts, so I'm not sure what you could pick up from him. Wait, I know. What about Rem? Rem? Aang would say. Yeah, she actually has the affinity for water, and she's pretty good with it too. Could she be your instructor? Rem, my master? I mean, I wouldn't mind, but would it work? I mean, like you said, the way I use the elements isn't really the same as how you use it. Yeah, but it's not that different either. I'd have to think the best way to describe it is you're like a faucet. A faucet? Exactly, a faucet. You could say that there are different routes a faucet takes, but in the end of the day, the water is the water and it all comes from the same source. Or I guess a better way of describing it, if magic is like a river, your bending is like a stream. They're 2 different things, sure, but in the end of the day, they all drain out into the sea. One big body of water, it's all connected. So maybe wire magic might not be the same as wire bending, but in the end, I think it's just a good substitute, and you'll still get the same results. This had Aang thinking. If he was going to be in this world for an extended period of time, his duty as the Avatar was to master the 4 elements. He couldn't just rest on his laurels and wait until he got back home, assuming he got back home at all. He was going to have to do something while he was here and make the most of his time. Amelia would ask Rem on Aang's behalf, and Amelia would agree, seeing it as a request. Although she was a bit unsure, at the behest of Amelia, she would agree. That evening, both Aang and Rem would walk out to the pool that was beside the mansion. Standing before the wires, both Rem and Aang would work in their mastery of wire. Even though the way that they used it wasn't the same, the principle still applied. For Aang, to master wire, it wasn't just so much him learning how to bend it. It was his state of mind while using it. The one good thing about a wire arts user is that wire and wind could often go hand in hand. Wire and wind were 2 of the elements that shared a lot of similarities. They were free-flowing and moving. But while the wind, it could go anywhere and everywhere, wire was still a substance that was held to some laws of physics. But the thing about wire is that it had the ability to take any form it was given. It had an ability to master itself in a way that wind simply could not. If the air was free-flowing and moving, wire was malleable. It was the most bendable. Aang would watch and study as Rem would move the wire in her hands. The way she was able to make it flow all around her, with elegance and grace. It was something that Aang hoped to follow. As he started, at first, his will seemed to be weak. He was really unsure of himself in some regard. But slowly, Rem would help him. Of course, Aang stumbled more often than he would have liked to have admitted, but Rem found it endearing in a way. Even though he wasn't good at it at first, he was still persistent and willing to learn. Granted, there were some things that she simply couldn't fully explain to him, since their power sets, the way that they used, it was still different in the end of the day. But still, for Aang, the results were more than he could have asked for. As he continued in his training, he found himself being able to bend the wire more and more effectively. The 2 of them would practice day by day, making wire rise and fall, swaying it side to side. And another practice was for Aang to walk around the mansion while holding a bubble of wire floating in the air. It was about as big as the size of the palm of his hand, but this was about maintaining focus and concentration. He had to do 50 laps around the mansion, keeping the wire in its round shape. And if the wire bubble burst or popped, he'd have to start all over. Safe to say, Aang did not enjoy the first half of his day, as he started over more times than he would have liked. But by the end, he eventually finished his lap, maintaining the bubble of wire perfectly. The next stage of his training was to maintain wire in the shape of a cup. It would start with Aang having a cup of wire. Aang would have to maintain the form of wire as the same as the cup, holding it and walking around the mansion. This was to help him maintain focus in the shape of the wire. If the wire deviated from its form of the cup, he'd have to start over. Of course, this was definitely trial by fire, and Aang found himself being burnt a lot for this being wire training. But even still, he was able to get the hang of it. And even Ram was impressed by what he could do. Of course, she was kind of surprised that she wasn't asked. Even if he was a wind master, maybe there was something she could have showed him. But all the same, Aang was happy with what he was able to do. Before long, Aang could feel his mastery over water slowly taking form. If he was able to keep up this pace, who knows? He might be a fully fledged avatar before he made it home. One issue Aang had, though, was making sure to keep everything as before. He couldn't allow for things to change or to deviate. That meant going to the village and potentially finding whoever was cursing him. Although from the onset, nothing seemed to be off or out of place. The villagers and the children, they were all happy and kind to him as they had always been. Of course, Aang still had some rather misfortunate mishaps, such as getting bit by a puppy. The thing was cute, but he had no idea of knowing just why it would bite him in the first place. All the same, the villagers were happy to see Aang. They enjoyed seeing him do his tricks with the air scooter and flying around on his glider. He promised that he'd do some more playing with them another time, as he left alongside with Rem and Ram as they had finished getting the groceries that they needed. Once they had arrived to the mansion, Aang would make his way to Beatrice. If she had any way of detecting if he had been cursed, then now was the time to figure it out. If it wasn't anyone from the mansion, it had to be from the village. And if it was from the village, then this was his do or die time. Of course, Beatrice was surprised to see that Aang would come back just a few days after asking her about curses. The chances that he could have actually been cursed was very low. I mean, there's no way he could have been. But he was. He had actually been cursed. It was dormant. It was just one, so she was able to dispel it. Of course, it would dispel from the place that it had been marked to begin with. Aang wondered where it could have been. Was it the guy that patted him on the shoulder? The old woman that patted him on his head? The children that grabbed at his feet? The curse emanated in a black mist from his hand. The same hand that the puppy bit him. No way. That's what killed me? It seems you were bitten by a maw beast, I suppose. That's how the curse was planted on you. You're thankful that it was just one. If you got bit by a multitude of those things, getting rid of the curse would be next to impossible. Why is that? Curses are like yarn. Imagine taking multiple strings of yarn, tying them together in knots, and then trying to undo them. If it's simply just one string of yarn, you can sever it and remove it with ease. But multiple pieces of yarn all strung up, tied, and knotted together, it'd be next to impossible to do it in just one fell swoop. It would take a long time and mastery. Even for someone of my caliber, I could only undo maybe 50 curses at once. If it were over 100 or even higher, it'd be next to impossible. Not that I couldn't do it, it's just that you wouldn't have enough time before you died. Wait, if that's the case, then the village, those kids, they're probably in trouble. I have to go. However, as Aang was getting ready to leave, there was something else that had changed as well. Aang looked around for Roswaal, but Roswaal wasn't there. Ram, where's Roswaal? Master Roswaal? Oh, he stepped out for the evening. He says he won't be back until maybe tomorrow or the day after. What? Aang couldn't believe it. Why was Roswaal gone? He had never left in any loop he had done before now. So what could this have been? Was finding out what caused the curse changing events? Had he done something that could make things happen differently? He knew one thing was for sure. There were definitely other forces that were at work. Aang will explain to them that he had to go back to the village. Learning that he had been cursed and that the same fate could have befallen those other kids or who else, he knew he couldn't stay. Of course, everyone would be worried for Aang. For one, they didn't want him to get into any danger on his own. And, for better or for worse, they were still skeptical, not knowing if he could be trusted or if he were some spy from another royal faction or worse, the cultists. Aang didn't have time for this argument. They were free to think whatever they wanted, but he couldn't just sit back while people were in trouble. He couldn't make that mistake again. Seeing that he was determined, Ram would allow Rem to go with him. The two making their way down to the village, where the adults would be concerned as the children had gone missing. And what was worse, the barrier that was surrounding the village that protected it from mob beast attack, a section had been broken, meaning that if the mob beasts were going to make an attack, they could do so undetected and undeterred. Aang knew that he couldn't afford to wait, he had to go. However, before leaving, one of the villagers would give Aang a sword. They didn't mind that he fought with a bow staff, but if he was going to face mob beasts, he'd need a lot more than that. Aang wasn't sure about taking the weapon. Using a sword, it wasn't his style. However, he would be warned that the mob beasts were not something that could be taken lightly. Aang found himself being conflicted. He never wanted to kill. Taking a life, it wasn't in his nature. But at that moment, he thought about the children, those who would suffer and die. From what he had learned from Beatrice, the only way to effectively get rid of the curse was to get rid of the ones that placed it. He was now left with a dilemma. Either kill the mob beast and save the children, or do nothing against the mob beast and the children potentially die. Maybe if he could get them out of there, if they hadn't been bitten too badly, maybe it could be undone. But no. He couldn't go through with that sort of thinking and mindset. He didn't like it. And this was the greatest compromise he felt he could make. But he took the sword and placed it on his back. He didn't want to have to use it, but he would do what needed to be done if the time came. Along with Rem brandishing her swinging mace, as well as entering into her demon Oni form, as a single horn grew on her forehead, the two would race through the forest quickly, before arriving to a clearing where all the children were lying on the ground writhing in pain. They had bite marks all over them. It was just like he would have feared. It meant they had multiple curses. And what was worse, they didn't have many people that could heal at the moment. Sure, they could call for Beatrice and for Amelia, but it would take them some time to get here. And even still, could they really afford to wait? As Rem sat with the children, Petra would say that there was still someone else. The girl with the blue hair and the braid. She was still deep within the forest, with the hordes of mob beasts all around her. Aang would immediately take off, Rem calling back towards him, not wanting him to leave. She was worried. She was worried for him, worried for everyone's safety. And even still, she didn't know why. Why was he getting involved in this? He was ultimately a stranger. He hardly knew any of these villagers, but yet he was willing to go so far for them. Rem, Aang would say as he looked back towards her. I know it's hard for you to believe this, but honestly, it's my duty. Even if I'm not from this world, The duty of the Avatar is to protect and bring balance. If I have the power to save a life, then it is my obligation to do so. If I sit back and do nothing, I'm going to be making the same mistake I made all those years ago. And I won't let that happen again. I promise you. Aang would grab hold of her hand as he smiled. It'll be alright. I promise I'll come back. And with that, Aang rushed into the forest. It grew darker the deeper he went in, only the light of the full moon shining above him. As he made it to yet another clearing, he found the girl lying on the ground. As he picked her up and held her, he could sense that he wasn't alone. Within the forest, glowing red eyes shimmered as a growl snarling and echoing all throughout the darkness of the forest. I'm not going to let you get anywhere near her. If you want to come for them, you'll have to go through me. The large maw beast would come charging towards Aang. However, Aang would use his staff, sending a slashing wind, knocking away at the maw beast as he ran back with the girl. The horde would start to appear as Aang would try to fight them off while protecting the young child. However, a swinging mace that would fly past his head and smash the head of one of the maw beasts would arrive. It was Rem. Rem explained that she was able to get some help getting the children back to the village, and that she had come to back him up. Aang explained, however, that they were going to have to kill the maw beast here and now. They couldn't afford to wait. Rem understood what he meant, but she was still concerned. She didn't know if they could do it on their own. But Aang stood determined. He wasn't going to allow things to end this way. He would create air scooters for the both of them as they went racing through the forest floor with the maw beast quickly behind them. Seeing that they were going to be caught up too soon, Aang would give the young girl to Rem. Rem using the air scooter to continue on to the barrier, while Aang would take a turn, with the maw beast chasing after him. One other thing he learned was that they went after the largest source of mana, and it seemed he had plenty of it, and they were attracted to the dark sense, the sense of his power. It seemed that whatever this curse, this thing that had surrounded him, the smell of the witch, it was potent, and it seemed to attract the maw beast like a moth to a flame. He arrived over to a raging river. As he landed, the maw beast would seemingly have him backed up against the waters. However, Aang was not finished. He would begin to fight off the maw beast as he drew his sword. He channeled his airbending through it. It was light and refined. Silently, he would say an apology for the lives he was about to take. He took no joy in using this weapon. He never would. But right now, his duty was to protect. It was either these maw beasts or the children, these creatures of evil. In that case, then they were evil that he would rid from this world. Using the sword as a conduit, he would send sharp slashes of wind, also using the water from the river by his side to fight against the maw beasts to great effect. Of course, they continued to swarm all around him. There were so many of these things, and the words of Beatrice still haunted him. He couldn't afford to allow even one of them to escape. All of them had to die. Even still, the numbers were starting to become overwhelming. However, relief would come in the form of Rem. Rem had returned. Together, the two of them would fight against the mob beast, side by side, working together. Slashes of water and of wind, both in combination as they fought. They were able to move as one, and the mob beasts were starting to go down. But then he saw it. That little mob beast, the one that bit him. That little guy seemed to be the ringleader in all of this. Aang knew that was the one they had to take out above all else. As he and Rem continued on though, the little mob beast would transform, growing larger in size until eventually he towered over the forest and the both of them. With the horde of mob beasts afterwards, both Aang and Rem would dodge and counter to the best of their ability. They knew they couldn't run away from this battle, but at the same time, the chances of winning seemed to decrease further and further as it drew on. It seemed as though at the last moment that Aang had finally met his match. As he had tripped for just one moment and fell to the ground, as it seemed as though the mobbies were about to swarm over him, their teeth ready to bear down and rip him apart. However, before they could, Rem would push Aang out of the way as he fell into the water side, as the mob beast began to bite on her as she fought them off. Even through her yells of pain, she also sent out a shrieking sound of rage, ripping and tearing the mob beast apart, while it seemed they were doing the same to her. Aang watched as he fell into the waters below. His body was riddled with pain, more excruciating than he had ever been through in his life. But still, even under the rushing waters below, he could hear the sound of Rem, her agonizing as she continued to fight. She was giving it her all, not just him. He had to go farther. He had to do more. It wasn't going to end like this. Not again. The waters began to glow and stir. Rem had finally managed to push away some, but the larger mob beast was bearing down at her, ready to crush her with his massive palm. However, the collective waters began to rise as it transformed and took shape. Within the center of the watery beast that had emerged, there was Aang, his eyes glowing menacingly as he looked upon the larger mob beast.
Enough! I'm putting an end to this! Now!
Controlling the monstrous body of water, Aang would slash away at all of the mob beasts before him. None would be allowed to escape his sight. Rem would watch in awe at what she was seeing. She never thought that Aang could do something like this. This mastery over water, it was beyond anything she could have fathomed. If this was his true power, what he was capable of, then he would really be a force to be reckoned with. The fighting ceased as Aang and the water itself would collapse. Rem rushed and pulled him out of the river. He was just barely conscious as he looked up towards her, as she was bathed in the full moon's light. I did it. Aang smiled at her happily, as his vision blurred and faded. What happened next could only be described as a nightmare. At first, Aang felt as though he were walking through the Eastern Air Temple, although it didn't really feel like him, like he was in the body of someone else, and the only thing he could do was observe. The temple looked like it had been in ruins, like no one had been watching over it for a long time. As he walked through the dark corridors, he came to a room that was closed off. Inside it, he saw Fire Nation soldiers, or at least what remained of them. their uniform and bones scattered around, and at the center was a body, the body of an air nomad who had long since passed away. Gyatso! Aang would wake up in a cold sweat. He found himself bandaged and lying in that same familiar bed. Rem was startled, but she hadn't let go of his hand the whole time. Rem? Oh, Aang, are you alright? I'm fine, it's just... I had a really bad dream. I understand. I'm just glad you're okay. Rem would watch over Aang while he was recovering. Aang being grateful that she was there for him, and she was happy that he had recovered. He had done so much for all of them that she could never repay. She would lament how useless she felt, and Aang even learned of her and Ram's backstory. The tragedy of the demon clan, of those born as twins, their fall as the witch cultist attacked, and the loss of Ram's horn. All of the burden and all of the troubles that weighed on Rem's mind. She tried to be the best that she could, but she always felt useless. She felt as though her sister was much better than her, whether it be in her skills with magic or her skills as a maid. Even when she tried to be Aang's teacher, he showed that he had a mastery over water that she could never reach. Aang would comfort her in that moment. He assured her that what happened wasn't him. In fact, she saw the bitterness in his eyes as he said it. I'm not a master of anything. Truthfully, I haven't done anything worth of note. What you saw was the latent power of those that came before me. I didn't have any control over that situation or my actions. If it wasn't for the power that was used by someone else, we probably wouldn't even be here. Don't look at me like a hero, when I'm nothing but a failure. That's not true. Even still, you show what you can do, and you've done so much. Maybe we're both not where we want to be, but that doesn't mean we can't get there. And I'm still going to need you, Rem. Really? Of course. You are my master after all. I'm counting on you. Rem would smile happily in Aang's assurance. Later that night, Aang would meet with Amelia outside. She had been so worried for him to do something so reckless, but Puck was impressed. The boy always had something new to show them. He was really something. Even if you are powerful, you should still be careful. Don't try and do everything on your own. I'm sorry. I really wasn't trying to worry you or anything. I just knew that I had to jump into action. I couldn't afford to wait. That's what they all say, and then they end up dying. Seriously, you should be more considerate. Just because you can try to do something on your own, it doesn't mean you need to. And you should remember that when you go out and do something, there are others who are just as worried about your safety as you are them. Aang would nod in understanding as Amelia would smile happily. Also, I have something here for you. Your old clothes. We've tried patching them up as best as we can, but they were already a bit too small for you to begin with. We have material that we could use, but we thought you might like this. Seeing the style of your clothing, we figured that this would suit you, Puck would say. As they handed him the box, Aang would take out the new set of clothes that he was given. Wow. You guys made this just for me? he felt something wrap around him. It was Rem. She had grabbed hold of him and was hugging him? Do you like it? I love it. Thank you. Rem, what are you doing? I thought that he could use a bit more healing, so I just wanted to wrap myself around him. I see, Puck would say, wrinkling his nose and flaring his little cat ears. It looks like you might be a little jealous there, Emilia. No, it's nothing like that at all. No, Puck, you don't know anything. I'm just worried about his safety, that's all. If he needs to be healed, then I'll heal him. I can help as well. Yes, but you've already been through so much. And what about your wounds? They need to be checked as well. The two girls would take pulling Aang back and forth for what seemed like eternity, before eventually stopping as Aang looked like he were about to vomit. As he was happy for what they had given him, he would go off and change into his new attire. As he came back out, everyone would look very impressed with his new style. So guys, what do you think? This concludes ReZero Avatar Loss. What if Aang was in ReZero? Season 1, Part 3. As always, if you enjoyed today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we continue Naruto DxD, The Last Shinobi. What if Naruto was in high school DxD? Season 1, Part 4, the Season 1 finale. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.